This is Vinny Cervantes from the Poor People's Campaign, which is a national movement to bring a moral imperative to fight the issues of racism and poverty and ecological devastation, as well as the war industry, and just this call to fight for what's right versus what's wrong. And we just wrapped our 2018 Poor People's Assembly in Denver, Colorado, where several organizations spoke on the work that they're doing and the initiatives that they're driving that we as the campaign and as a movement want to support. So I'd love to show you a few clips, and here those are.
So again, I'm Reverend Tammy Garrett Williams, the CEO and founder of the Above Waters Project and the State Conference Secretary for the NAACP for the state of Colorado, Montana, and Wyoming, our state area conference. Today, as we gather for the launch of the new Poor People's Campaign in Denver, we reflect on unfinished work of the Poor People's Campaign that was started by Dr. King and carried on by his wife and life partner, Coretta Scott King. Today, as we gather, we also acknowledge the game-changing work of Dr. William Barber, who stepped up from his, yes, Dr. Barber. He responded this way: this movement requires us to push into the national consciousness of a deep moral analysis that is rooted in an agenda to combat systemic poverty and racism, warmongering, economic justice, voter suppression, and other attacks on the most vulnerable. The Above Waters Project and its members knows that there is a relationship between poverty and mass incarceration. Our jails, our prisons, and even our ICE detention facilities are filling up with Black and brown people, and even with people that are seen less than as the lower class white people. These times right now, they demand that we share information and be unified as never before. These times demand that we commit ourselves to be the keeper of our sisters and our brothers. We are all God's children, and that Black lives matter, and the lives of those disenfranchised matters. And guess what? We won't stop until justice comes to this land.
You guys may have heard of the Right to Rest Act, which is some state legislation that Denver Homeless Out Loud has sponsored at the state capitol the last 4 years. The Right to Rest Act basically says people have the right to sleep in public spaces, as long as they're not encumbering anything or being a danger to anybody. Have a right to share food in public spaces, have a right to sleep in a legally parked car, and have a right to reasonable expectation of their personal property. All of which is illegal here in Denver right now. The only thing how many people are familiar with the murders that happened a couple of weeks ago? Those folks were in a camp just off of 6th and Broadway. Those folks at that camp were doing just fine. They were protecting each other. There were several people there. That camp got swept repeatedly by our police. Those people scattered. Some of them who scattered went further out from the city, went to a more remote, more dangerous place, and as a result, they wound up becoming the target of a very violent crime in which they died. They were killed. This is what happens when we criminalize our homeless population and send them out to different parts of the city. First, we keep them out of places by keeping the rents too high. Second, we continually send the police to hassle them night in and night out, and then after getting closed off to places that are public places. This park, Civic Center Park, this is a public park. Should be shared by everybody. But the police will run the homeless out of here every night. The extremists who will try to put their morality on top of the homeless community will say the homeless community is lazy. But the numbers say that 60% of the homeless community is working. So that 60% of that community that can't afford a place to live, and they're working. But that's part of what the Poor People's Campaign is about, is to push our communities to have a moral response to the way we treat our poor.
Whenever the middle class catches a cold, poor people catch the flu. And to make it also very clear, race has a very heavy impact on how your poverty is experienced as well, especially for immigrants, especially for indigenous folks, especially for Black folks, especially for women as well. So I wanted to give my deep appreciation. I see this as a very sacred space, as a space for addressing poverty and addressing the exploitation and injustice of many of our people here in this state.
Yeah, so I'm here today not only to support the Poor People's Campaign, which is has an incredible focus in our time today, but also because I am representing a campaign and a coalition known as Abolish Slavery Colorado. If I can shine this up here. And I really wanted to spread the word about the efforts that we're doing, especially around Amendment A, which is focused on abolishing the loophole for slavery and involuntary servitude in our state constitution.
How many people here know that slavery is still allowed in our state constitution? Yeah. It ain't good. That's shocking. Our Colorado Constitution was drafted in 1876. A little while after the Civil War, but like so many other states in our country, we decided to adopt language from the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which stated that it's all right to be enslaved if you're convicted of a crime. So your first responsibility to abolish slavery in the state of Colorado is to vote yes on Amendment A. Vote yes on Amendment A.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Cooper. I am the Deputy Director of the Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition. Our organization does conduct statewide voter education and registration for people with criminal backgrounds in the state of Colorado. Contrary to popular belief in the urban and suburban myth that you can't vote if you have a criminal record, in our state it's not true. Colorado does not practice permanent disenfranchisement. So therefore, on any given day, there's about 125,000 people in our state with criminal records that are eligible to vote and may not know that they're eligible, right? Our state has roughly around 6.2 million people, and 1 out of 33 people in our state have a criminal record. You've heard a lot of talk this afternoon about the correlation between poverty and the criminal justice system. But I think there's a fundamental question we have to ask ourselves that we're losing sight of. One, although I appreciate the fact that the Poor People's Campaign is launched here in Colorado, I want to invite you to consider that this is not a campaign, that this is a movement. Secondly, we also have to figure out how are we going to build and mobilize the political power of the very people that we're talking about that's impacted by poverty. We got to go get the very people who are suffering from poverty and mobilize them on the steps of every capital across this country. Mobilize them in the city council buildings when they're setting the budget and they're prioritizing $24 million for jails and only $5 million for housing. We got to mobilize them at the state capitol when the joint budget committee is meeting, when they're going through the budget process, and every single person impacted by poverty is mobilizing right there in the very room of the so-called lawmakers and decision makers.
Conviction. So that's to say that 97% of the time people are convicted of a crime. Most of the time it's because they don't know that they don't know or they can't afford to actually argue their innocence. So that's usually when they don't take a plea, or when they do take a plea bargain, it's because they either can't afford the higher fines, the higher charges, or the actual court costs. And so we want to bring attention to that campaign because it sits at the intersection of the economic barrier that people have to actually prove their innocence in our criminal justice system. And if we acknowledge the fact that our criminal justice system disproportionately impacts Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, we know that is also disproportionately impacting folks that are currently experiencing both poverty and racial discrimination.
We are here in the wealthiest country in human history. We are 8 miles away from Cherry Hills, which is the second wealthiest neighborhood in the wealthiest country in human history. We are 3.5 miles away from Elyria, Swansea, which is the most polluted neighborhood in any developed nation and has one of the highest rates of cancer and respiratory illness in any developed nation.
I am a committee member and co-founder of the Poor People's Campaign in Colorado. I have spent my entire life below the poverty line. I am born and raised in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, so I have seen the collapse of industry throughout the Midwest. I have seen what that's done to working class Americans. And I also am a veteran. I know the economic difficulties our veterans face. And through my disabilities, being homeless, I have seen the economic segregation and disregard that the homeless population is faced with and confronted with. And if we inform the people within the community, and if we incite action from them to take back the power, whether it's through education, for job training, or whether it's for voter outreach and informing them of the candidates, we can start from the ground floor up, changing our communities for the better.
And you can also take direct action in our community by registering to vote, sorry, am I a broken record yet? I would like to give a chance to the community to speak, because this is what it's about. We're about a community empowering, educating, informing, and inciting action.
Andrea Chiriboga Flor. I work with 9 to 5 Colorado. We're a grassroots member-based organization that works on labor policy mostly, but in the last few years we've been working on housing. And we specifically have been working in a mobile home park in Aurora called Denver Meadow.
Yo fui desalojada en el 2017, en diciembre, y para mí ha sido muy difícil obtener una vivienda digna. Las rentas están a través de $2,500 para tener una casa. Sigo en la lucha porque creo que todos tenemos el derecho de tener una vivienda digna y vivir en paz.
So I was evicted from the mobile home park in December of 2017, and it's been very difficult to be able to find dignified housing. The apartments now are like $1,500, and I'm still here today, and I'm still fighting because I believe that we all deserve to have stable housing. I didn't write. I think that was it.
How many of you are hungry this afternoon? You hungry? Hungry? How many of you that are hungry can afford to go to McDonald's and buy yourself a hamburger and some French fries and a Coke? Thought so. The reason why I bring that up is the number one thing that is keeping our poor and keeping their children starving is no food. They can't afford to eat. They can't afford to take their pills. They can't afford housing. It's a vicious circle. The reason I came up here is the second Thursday and the fourth Thursday of every month, Feeding Denver's Hungry is over here at Urban Peak and over at St. Francis, handing out free food.
We've reached a point in this society where we see somebody that's hurting and we walk past them like we didn't see them, like we don't know. I'm pushing really hard just to get us to talk to each other, just to understand how the simplicity of a how you doing and a smile can make somebody's day. I don't have the answers. I don't have any of the answers. But I do know that if we take the time to just love each other, to just give to one another like we all bleed the same red, we can and will make a difference. I want us to live in a world where I look at that guy walking around behind us and I know that he's God. Where that lady that's never seen me before looks at me and knows that I'm God. And we have reached a place that what is important to us is that all of us are okay. I think the reason that I came to the Poor People's Campaign instead of, say, Black Lives Matter or somewhere else is because I know we cannot win as long as we are splintered. It can't be black folks over here and brown folks over there and women over here. We must all come together. Otherwise, we lose. We're not outnumbered, but we are definitely out-financed. And unless we stand shoulder to shoulder and back to back, it's not going to get any better.
That when we're all healthy, it provides a better environment for us to source solutions to our problems. And I think that includes taking on, war profiteering and, corrupt corporate business and really just kind of leveling the playing field so that we can begin generating some of the ideas to solve the problems we're faced with now and that we will be faced with in the future.
People's Campaign does kind of an amazing thing in bringing together a lot of different issues that all intersect and really making it clear that you can't solve, racism issues without also addressing economics issues, and you can't solve climate change without addressing economics and racism and all of those sorts of things. So it's really important to me, given that there are scientists who say we have 5 years to end oil and gas if we want to survive as a species, that we figure out how to come together, because it's necessary to our survival and to solving all of these other horrible problems going on.
I loved what I saw. What we had were a lot of speakers talking about some of the local ways people can get involved with issues that are aligned with the Poor People's Campaign. And also we were registering people with the movement, trying to kind of spread the word. And so if you'd like to be involved with the movement, you can visit us at our Facebook page, and that's Colorado Poor People's Campaign. Another way to reach out to us would be through email, and that would be through colorado@poorpeoplescampaign.org. That's probably the best way. You'll receive our emails from there, and stay in touch, stay involved. If you'd like to get more involved, please let us know that by email. That's probably the best way at this point.